Or you know what you think you do? Yeah, I'll do it later on. I'm gonna do some B stars in a little bit. Today or tomorrow? Oh, today. I'm doing it for last week. I'm doing it this week.
I like this four-wheeler, but
Watch it, little shit.
I have it. I have it because my grandpa, who's a farmer, bought it.
I'm sorry. I can't see you on the best button, little rat. I'm sorry.
They bought it to herd cattle or whatever. For
No,
general
I'm sorry.
farm use.
You need where you go. I can't see you all the time.
But I have it because sentimental value. He's no longer around, but this four-wheeler is. And his pickup, and I have several of his tools in my wood shop. I don't really have a use for a four-wheeler like this, especially with the small amount of land that I have. I enjoy it, but I don't really need it. But because it belonged to him, I feel like I can't really ever sell it. This is just a piece of memory from him. And keeping it around is easy. One, because it's small and light, it fits anywhere, but also it's remarkably reliable. It starts up every year. The battery's always dead because I let it sit so long and I can never remember to put a battery tender on it. But it starts every year with the pull rope thingy. This year it had a lot of trouble starting. It just required a lot of cranking. But before that, I took the seat off and had a look at the carburetor. And all of the fuel lines going to the carburetor, aside from the main one, are deteriorated and falling off. And despite that, it doesn't have any noticeable problems. The spark plug's the right color. It starts up, doesn't run too rich. It idles fine. It doesn't backfire or anything weird. So I don't know what all those lines do, but I'm going to leave it alone because it seems to be working and it's not even leaking. So it's like a North Star engine in a Cadillac. You don't question why it's still working. You just accept the fact that it is and you leave it alone until problems arise. So it's been remarkably reliable and I'm planning to keep it around for as long as I can. Eventually I'll have to look at those fuel lines, but not now.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing this Sunday?
I mean, more than just memories that my grandpa built into this thing, I have several memories in this thing as well. For instance, this front rack here, it's bent over on one corner because when I was 12 or 13 or somewhere around that age, I got to wondering what this override button on the handlebars did because when I pressed it, it wouldn't do anything. And then one day I thought, hey, it has a reverse speed limiter. I wonder if this override button overrides that. So I tested it. And when I tested it, I had way too much throttle applied. So when I hit the override button, it went flying backwards. And I don't know what happened with the front wheels, if there was a differential in tire pressure or what, but the handlebars did this, and I rolled it. The only damage on the four-wheeler was this bent front rack. The handlebars got squished down and nothing else. It was still running when it rolled over. I was fine. I was wearing a helmet, but I was scared. It scared the willies out of me. All I wanted to do was test what that button did, and I ended up with an upside-down four-wheeler. As I remember it, when I was young, I was pretty cautious when driving this thing. Somewhat overly cautious. I guess I just wasn't a very adventurous youth. And I remember one time my half brother came for a visit, Michael, if you're watching, and he drove this thing while I was on it. He drove it way faster than I was used to and scared the dickens out of me. So after that, naturally, I went back to driving overly cautiously. I smell that toothbrush smoke. So that's my four-wheeler. I like it. I've got a lot of history with it. It has sentimental value. It's lasted a long time. It will probably continue to last a long time. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.
Pizza! We're trapped by dishes. Don't worry, they got new Dawn Power Suds. It traps, locks, and removes 99% of grease, so it doesn't get passed from dish to dish. Clean and stacked. Like ducks in a row. New Dawn Power Suds. Sorry I took the last two. I'm sorry I added bucks to IRS. You did what? I got my nails.
little electric car that couldn't, the Wigo, is dead. Several months ago, during the winter, while my shop was being worked on, I left the Wigo outside in the cold. And I left it outside for just a little bit too long, long enough for the onboard computers, i.e. the BMS modules, etc., to drain the main battery pack of the car down to almost dead. Also, the onboard car charger, almost dead, is as good as dead, and it refused to charge the battery after this point, which means that now the battery pack is totally dead. So now the task is to drop the battery pack out of the Wigo for two reasons. One, to remove and inspect each individual battery cell, all 36 of them, to see if any of them can be saved or if they're all a total loss. And two, to see what lies waiting between the battery pack and the body shell. Because if you remember, the Wigo is based on the Shuangguan Noble body shell, and supposedly, to make that battery pack fit in there, Wigo hacked away at the unibody structure of this body shell to shove it in there. So I'm excited to see what sort of hack jobbery lies in waiting for us between the body shell of the car and the battery pack. So let's get started. It looks like there's just 6 bolts holding this entire battery pack into place underneath the car here. They're very large bolts. There's only 6 of them. So I guess not a whole lot to undo. Plan of action here is pretty simple. Drop the entire car body shell with the battery pack attached to it down onto my little heavy-duty cart here. By the way, if you want to see how I made this cart, I made a video of it on my second channel. I'll put a link somewhere. And then unbolt the 6 bolts that retain the battery pack to the car. Drop the battery pack down onto this cart, and then lift the car away with the lift. Pretty straightforward. I'll have some cables to disconnect in there, but shouldn't be too awful. Unless I get electrocuted, and then it would be awful. Lower it down until it just barely makes contact. Alright, start undoing some bolts. With my wizzy do hickey. There we go. Last bolt removed. I think. Unless there's 4 bolts somewhere that I don't see yet. Alright, let's gently raise it up. It's very difficult to do with this lift because it's just a push button. Not very sweet at all. Battery pack is going up with it. What did I do wrong? There are 2 bolts in the middle of this battery pack down here, and I'm going to undo them. Not because I think they're actually holding the battery pack in place, but because something's holding the battery pack in place, and I don't know what it is, so I might as well just remove these 2. I think that's all the bolts now. Okay, so there may have been 8 bolts holding this in, rather than 6. 2 of them were rather small. Very, very long, but rather small. Pulse it upward. Whole battery pack seems to be lifting away now. And by that I mean dropping out, not lifting away. The car's doing the lifting. Battery pack is now loose. So let's get in back here and see what cables I need to disconnect. Wow, there's a little connector back here that, no joke, is being held on by electrical tape. Here it is. I disconnected the high voltage leads to the car, the high voltage leads to the charger, well, from the charger to the battery, and there was one other connector in there, and I think I have everything, so I'm going to rise it up slowly and check every inch or 2. All right, I disconnected 3 more connectors. I think that's it. Here it is. The battery pack. And here's the battery pack outside of the car. Surprisingly, it's not as bad as I was expecting it to look. I was expecting it to look like it was built by an 8th grade shop class, but it looks like it was hand fabricated by a somewhat professional company. That's the key thing to note there, is that it looks like it was hand fabricated. It does not look like it was mass produced. It's all thrown together with very thick aluminum, and all of it is welded. And there's some afterthought looking stuff here, like this thin sheet of acrylic that covers up something. There's these half-inch thick slabs of aluminum here and here. It looks like they were tacked on later. Nothing. There's no way. Everything's just exposed to the dirt and road grime and everything that gets up around the sides of the battery pack and on top. I'm sure the Lifeboat Forces cells in here will be fine. They're not going to be damaged by all of this dirt getting in here, but I'd like to see the electronics not covered in a layer of filth. That would be nice, even if it doesn't really do anything. Oh, the pristine cells underneath, well, pristine-ish. They're still very dirty on the edges. Look at them. This is just a cover. Why is it so heavy? Again, hand fabrication. It's very wonderful in here, but there's lots of Delrin in here for locating the batteries, and there's some grooves rounded in them for wire passages. Very clearly handmade for this and not mass-produced. But it's interesting to see. Each one of these 36 lithium iron phosphate battery cells in this battery pack is rated at 3.2 volts nominal with a charging cutoff of 3.65 volts. That brings the entire pack voltage up to 115 volts nominal. However, I just took a reading of the entire pack voltage, and the entire pack altogether is reading a whole 21 volts right now, which, as you may or may not know, is substantially less than 115. So instead, cell 1. Only 35 more to go. Look, a little temperature sensor. That's cute. You know, I make fun of the build quality of this thing, but at least all the BMS modules and contactors here are on one nice, big, easy to remove, and extremely filthy plate. They have to have their block stuck in here, keeping the plate off of the contact. Okay, so that's what this sheet of acrylic was for. It was making sure that big aluminum plate that's sitting on top of here doesn't short out all the batteries. With this nice piece of what I assume is Delrin to keep the middle of the acrylic from blowing down. Lovely.
I'm gonna change it.
Alright, I figured out what these big fat slabs of aluminum are. They appear to just be squishing the battery pack this way. That's